Freestyle rocking from the Bronx with Papo. We want to talk about Brooklyn rocking, Bronx up rocking, and we just want people to share their history and knowledge. After the panel talk, after each one talks, then people could talk about their history. If we have some time, people could give a little history about each other. So, Papo, come on up.
Let's go.
So Papo is not just a dancer, you know. He writes, makes films. Back in the days, I did some graffiti for one of his movies, and
Forgot about that.
yeah. So
I was in it.
yeah. So go ahead, Papo. One love.
So you can hear me in the back? The acoustics here are good. Yeah. So we don't need no mic. So I want to go back maybe like 58 years.
Wow.
The beginning of what I believe and what I experienced to be, you know, the whole dance culture, right? There's always a beginning, right? Now, we know hip hop, we know house, even disco gets some play, but there's all of that. And I was part of that scene. I predate hip hop, I predate house, mainstream disco. What I was part of, they called disco, but it wasn't really disco. It was considered the juice bar culture, right? So the reason why they called it the juice bars, there was a whole bunch of them, right? When one closed, another one opened. It's where we hung out, right? The reason why they called it the juice bars is because, so there's a whole lot, I could do a whole semester of this stuff, right? Because we're talking about from the juice bar was like from 1970 to about 76, 77 it started to fall off. So, and I'd say like 20 years was packed in those 10 years, the way we lived. Right? People were burnt out already by, started in 70, they were burnt out by 72, 73, 74, they couldn't go anymore. So because of the way what we call party, all right? So the juice bars took advantage of these DJs, right? So what happened was DJs didn't have a mixer, right? They never mixed music. They used to do, you know, one song at a time, or they did their best with the volume, you know? So, but there was these clubs that had these DJs that were really smart. They were geniuses. And they figured out how to blend music. They called it blend, right? So there was the sound guy for these juice bars. His name was Alex Rosner. You could look this up. So Alex Rosner, he was the sound man for all these clubs, which were called juice bars. And he was an engineer, pretty much a genius himself. So he went out and he invented the mixer for these DJs because he saw how good they were. Right, so once he did that, it changed the club scene forever, right? What became an urban phenomenon went into a global phenomenon. This is the beginning, right? So the juice bars, what happened was when these DJs found mixing and they were able to mix this music together, the record companies started giving them records that didn't go into the radio, right? That didn't hit the streets until maybe 74. That's why when people say Just Begun was out on the street in 72, 73, that's not the truth, unless you had a connection, right? Because these DJs had this music, they were exclusive. And these juice bars made a lot of money off of us, the urban community, right? Because we were attracted to this music, right? So they opened up these clubs. And it was, at that time, and I don't know if it's still the same way, to get a liquor license took years. They couldn't wait, because they could make money. So they sold juice. No, they gave out juice. I used to go to these clubs, I used to get sick from drinking so much damn juice, right? So, but that's where the whole juice bar name came from. And it was these DJs who found this music, right? And we, from the street culture, right? Now, most of these clubs were in Manhattan. You had some of them in the Bronx, you had some in Brooklyn, right? You had the 310 in the Bronx, you had the Salsa came a little bit later, you had the Orange Peel was from back in those days in Brooklyn, right? But it was, the clubs were fresh, the Contiki, the Ruby Foo, the Sanctuary, the Leviticus. I mean, we can go down the line, you know, talking about these clubs that catered to us urban kids from, you know, the street. We connected with the music. And as we connected with the music, she's connected. As we connected to the music, this culture began to build. And we created this dance called rock. Rock was a very sophisticated type dance. I got there, it was already, by 71, 72, this was full blown. I got there when in 1972, right? So what happened was I danced, I was a pretty good dancer in the neighborhood. Let me go back a little bit, right? So before rock, right, in 68, 69, on the street, and this is the culture I'm talking about that got attracted to these clubs, these juice bars. On the street, they had street style dances, but they went to any time a new song came out, a real good song, they made up a dance to go with the song, right? And that's where it started. And that dance, it was just a dance, and they would dance that whole dance for that song, and for other songs like it, right? So, for instance, the Mother Popcorn, that was a big dance, right? That was the black and brown community. We used to party together. House parties, basements, right? The Mother Popcorn was a dance full of groove, right? There was the Tighten Up, there was the Scorpio, there was the Click Clack, there was the Hustler. I mean, one dance after another because they kept creating these songs, right? So listen, when you come from the ghetto, right? You got nothing, no time but to be creative. And we were creative, we created these dances. So what happened was when this other music started to come out, right, which was more intense, and it had like this percussion to it, right? So if you listen to Just Begun, Abigail Dreams, Life and Death, all the songs that b-boys use today, if you listen to those songs, they're heavy with bongos, congas, cowbell, right? Listen to Me goes off with the cowbell, and so does Just Begun. So that was music that the black and brown community connected to. And it was more the Puerto Ricans, right? Because we grew up with percussion. At 2 years old, I was watching my father move his hips, just like my mother did, right? With no shame in the game. That was the difference. This is why the Puerto Rican community really grabbed on to the rock dance. And we created this. So there was two factions to rock, right? So you had the sophisticated, very skilled dancers, right? Now I'll do a little demonstration who had footwork, connected with groove. Groove came from the black community, right? When we partied, I'm a first generation Puerto Rican, right? My father didn't dig the fact that I used to go down the block and hang out with my black friends and dance with them. I like dancing that more than I like the salsa, right? But that's where our groove came from, and we incorporated it in the rock. So you had a group that did this sophisticated type footwork, right? The hips. Again, that's why the black community didn't want to mess with rock, because you had to move your hips. They were like, yo, that's too feminine for us. Not for Puerto Ricans, because that's what we did. We did salsa, we did merengue, right? Our uncles moved just like my aunts. So this was a phenomenon that we created, and it wasn't just a dance to songs, it was a whole genre. We had like steps and moves and sequences. We created routines. Now, the thing about this dance was that it made its way around the world, right? Just like this scene, this juice bar scene, there was nothing like it. Again, you know, when you talk about these DJs, we're talking about David Mancuso. Again, you could look up these guys. Francis Grasso. Alfie Davidson was the guy we followed. Alfie was gay. He was black. They didn't give him the props that he deserved because he was better than all of them. But there was a powerful group that started their own record pool. And you had to be part of that. It was an exclusive type record pool. What happened was Eddie Rivera, who was from the Bronx, and he was Puerto Rican, he also was part of that first generation genius DJs, right? But he didn't like the fact that these guys were excluding us from the urban area. He didn't dig that. So he started his own record pool called IDRC. And that opened it up, right? It was, I say 74. You know, they say they had this music in 73. I didn't see it on the street until later. But, you know, dates get conflated, it gets twisted, whatever. But it was in 74 that he started IDRC. And that's when that music went into the street. And everybody was listening to it. And everybody created their own, whatever, their own version of rock, right? The other piece to this, so rock, right? So it was like 1, 2, 3, and it had groove, right? So when we competed, that's the other thing, we had dance contests, right? There was a dance contest every weekend. Sometimes on the weekday, they had this club called the Bonsoir, where Eddie Rivera was the DJ. Right? And he used to have a dance contest Monday because that's what attracted people from all over. People used to come from overseas just to watch us dance. This was a phenomenon, right? It was a quiet one, a small one, right? So that again turned into bigger and better things. That's when, so the reason why we called it rock, right? And this is important. So the rock, there were black rock musicians who did these songs, but they didn't do that acid rock, right? They had this soul, right? This funk. And because they used the percussion, they had this Latin flavor to it, right? This Latin rhythm. That's what made it distinct. And because it was rock, we called it rock, we called it dance rock. All right, so it was black rock musicians who came up with this new style song of music, and it wasn't just begun, right? You hear softer rock, right? More like La La Peace Song. You guys can look this up. La La Peace Song by O.C. Smith. It's a Shame by the Spinners. These are like really soft songs, right? That we used to dance and we used to, party with the girls. That was another big piece for us, right? We didn't have studios or instructors. We learned from being on the dance floor, right? And we were forced to connect with each other, right? So we wasn't thinking about steps, right? You know how everything is quick today? Hell no. We were looking at the girl straight in the eyes, and we was trying to be as sexy as we could for them, and they were doing the same with us. So there was a connection there that took us to a place where we experienced serious joy. Right? I'm not sure. I was just doing a workshop with 36 Chambers, Buddha Stretch, right? And one of the questions was like, they asked about how do we get to a point where we start connecting with each other? Because we're always thinking about the next step. What we're gonna do next. And I said, don't think about what you're gonna do next. Just dance together and make sure you look at each other when you dance. And that's what we did. That whole week was spent on partner dancing. Even if it was just straight up hip hop, we still put people together and made them look at each other. Because the way we learned, again, was through this magnificent way of partying. All right? That was the connection. All right? Yeah, we competed and we went home and we practiced our asses off, for these contests. But again, they played rock maybe once or twice during the night, 10 songs in a row. But the rest were the kind of songs that you had to dance with a girl. Right? So that was the connection that kept us together, and what helped us create. She's out. So yeah, and that's how we grew this dance. So it was an organic thing. You know, it wasn't, it was, the only reason was, you know, for us to enjoy, you know, the moment. I would get in a circle. So me and my partner, so when we first started, there was rubber band, right? I think I was talking about the two factions, right? There was rubber band and guys who danced like rubber band. They went to the floor. They were spectacular. They did splits. They did half splits. They did swipes. We didn't call them swipes back then. We said the dude is just throwing his body around, right? The helicopter. He did the helicopter, and his boys and people who danced like him did the helicopter. We said he does that, what was it, double jointed shit. So we didn't really coin any phrases, but we did these steps. You know, you had these boys from Washington Heights who went airborne in their rock dance, right? Everybody does flips and somersaults. These guys did it within the dance. So we were creating all this stuff, and it all came from the connection we made from each other. You know, nobody went out. So at that time, when you said, when you used the word burn, it had nothing to do with humiliation, had nothing to do with stabbing, none of that. It meant that I danced better than you at that moment. So if I was in a circle with you and I got the better of you, everybody's saying, yo, you burned that mother. You burned her. You know, that's what burn was. And it became something different, and everything evolves, which is cool. You know, I think it's all right. So the other thing that's really important, and I just want to open it up for questions, if that's cool. The other piece, and this is what I meant about burning out, right? This was a phenomenon. This was an amazing, you know, it's something you got addicted to, right? So we had, our main clubs were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. That was the main club we went to, right? Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, we go find another club that played our music. Not one that we did all the time, right? So that's 7 days a week that we partied, right? Some of the clubs that we went to were gay clubs, right? The gay clubs, as a matter of fact, on the weekends, our clubs closed at 4, the Footsteps 6. The gay clubs closed at 10, 11 a.m. the next day, and they played our music. So the Bonsoir was, you know, Monday disco club that we went to, that was a gay club for the most part. Thursday was the Hollywood, another gay club, but they had the DJs there. Nick Sayano played at the Hollywood. Eddie Rivera at Bonsoir. Francis Grasso and Alfie Davison, they played at the Sanctuary, right? So 7 days a week clubs, right? That wasn't enough. Saturday and Sunday, after the club closed, we went straight to Central Park. They took the equipment, and all the DJs met there. All the bad DJs, the best DJs, they met there and took turns. And we partied till like 5 or 6 o'clock to go home to change, to hit the club. Let me finish one more thing. That still wasn't enough, because during the week, we didn't go to school. We got up, and instead of going to school, we went to the hooky party. And we danced from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You see everybody leave at 3. I mean, it emptied out because, you know, school was over. So we had to get home, so our parents won't know that we were out. So that's why, you know, the likes of, I call us a disappearance of generation, right? We wasn't around to talk about. We did pass it on, right? Because you got guys like Fable. Fable is the brother who did all this for me. He went and he did research and he said, I'm gonna go out and get this untold story told, right? So that's why I say these guys burned out at a certain, so when I went to the Fresh, that was my first club. I went to the Fresh because this dude Puppet, a great dancer, you know, he said, you gotta come out, this is where it's at. So he took me, and everybody used to talk about Rubber Band. I went to see Rubber Band, right? And there was this other dude named Paulie, who was considered the best at that time, right? But he wasn't there, and I never got to see him. Why? Because he burned out. This is 72. right? But I saw other dancers there, and I fell in love, and I became addicted. And for the next 6, 7 years, that's all I did. So, you know, I've been skipping around. I've left quite a bit out, but I know I gave a lot. So any questions you guys have? I think the DJs were really important, and they're unsung. We don't talk about Francis Grasso. We don't talk about David Mancuso, right? We talk about Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash. Cool, beautiful. But these guys were there before them. Alfie Davidson was doing the breaks. In 1972, he was extending the breaks in these songs for us, the rock dancers, because these breaks were so short, you know, we could go off, but for so long. So he extended it, right? Walter Gibbons, he extended the songs, because songs, you know, you play a record, it was like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. That's where the 12-inch came from. So these dudes are the pioneers, and we need to give them credit. We can't give them credit if we don't know, right? And there's not many of us around to talk about it. That's why I think this is important, and hopefully it made sense to some of you guys. Yes?
Yeah, like you were saying, David Mancuso, that's one DJ. I heard of him. Now, that right there, like, I'm a DJ myself. Fable knows I DJ, I play all types of music. But my favorite type of music, I like playing more house, because the blend, because of the music. Now, the blending, the reason the way the culture is right now, because right now, look, right now we got this internet. These young kids today, they don't know nothing about that. Right now, if you play a record, they look at you like you crazy. What's that record's name? These are the times, like you said, these are the times it was good. It was a good time for us that we grew up, and something that we created of blacks and Latinos, what we created hip hop, we created disco. This is what we created. See what I'm saying? What kills me is, like I was talking before with my boy Pete, I said, probably what gets me upset about this, that brothers like you that know about the game, you're not getting nothing for it. But a brother that don't know, and like Fable, you're not getting nothing for it. But brothers that don't know nothing about it, they're making millions and millions of dollars out of it, of the culture. And they don't know nothing about the culture. And that's what's killing me right now. It's like right now, it's like people's walking in. Like I said, I told my boy, the guy with the red, he left. I said, you don't know who's that? That's Fable. You don't know who's that? Nah, what you talking about? I don't know. Because you're not paying attention. Well, understand is, like I said, brothers like you, Fable, brothers that been out there, you know, y'all should be getting the credit y'all supposed to be getting, like King Upright, supposed to be getting the credit supposed to be getting. But people that don't know nothing about the culture, they're making millions, millions, millions of dollars. Like people from here, they don't like it. Like you got your brother like Korea, Japan, France, all that. Y'all appreciate it more. And I salute y'all to that, because y'all appreciate it. Y'all know, they know where it came from. You know, if you go to Japan, there's still b-boying. You go to Africa, I looked at a video in Africa, we got breakers in Africa, you got poppers and lockers in Africa, and DJs that appreciate it. And everything came from here, but people don't appreciate it here. And it's good that what you're doing, you're giving us the knowledge, what you witnessed. See what I'm saying? This young generation, they don't know nothing about that, because they're caught into the internet. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, we got it. Next.
You know, any questions?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm sorry, just real quick, just so you guys